All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Millennials Are Old podcast. And you know what, Brian? There is a thing that we haven't talked about in a very long time. I've been really kind of racking my brain on trying to figure out a possible movie we could review for this episode. And you know what? A well-worn topic that we haven't done in a long time is the topic of based libs.
Sorry, I wasn't listening. I got some people talking to me on Twitter and they're calling me the F slur, so I wasn't really hearing anything you were saying.
Oh, okay, shit. You know what? Like I said, based libs and also
those guys.
Movies about guys that suck. Because we haven't talked about that in a while. I think the last one we probably did was, Observe and Report, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's guys that suck in movies we've done, but I would say that's the only movie about a guy that sucks. We do talk about based libs a lot.
Yeah, we do. But you know what we haven't ever talked about is unbased libs, or maybe you could even call them cucked libs.
Those guys. I certainly never was one of those guys, like in middle school.
I wasn't either. I've always been based as fuck. Like, I have always just been alpha, sigma. I was never a beta. Never.
I never listened to For Blood and Empire by Anti-Flag and was like, this is so fucking good. I'm going to play this for George W. Bush. Oh my God.
All right. And you know what? Without further ado here, let's get into the topic of our review. Our very first cucked lib and our second, I believe, review of a movie about a guy that sucks.
First documentary.
And our very first documentary, too. I'm glad you mentioned that. It is the 2017 movie, Who Is Arthur Chu? Now, Brian, I understand you have a little bit of a history with Arthur Chu. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, nothing too, special or notable. This probably wouldn't have been peak Gamergate era, because at that point, I wouldn't have followed Arthur Chu on social media and definitely saw him and thought he was annoying. I probably wasn't mad, per se, by much of what he was saying, probably sometime though around 2016, 2017, kind of the Bernie era, Bernie AD,
Yeah, Bernie AD, yeah.
When he started got really in on he just was really mad about, I don't know if he was saying dirtbag left yet. That term might not have quite been in vogue with guys like him. He might have been just saying Bernie bro or something. And I said some joke to him, and because I'm bad at making jokes, the thing that happens a lot is that people reply to me in earnest and try to have conversations with me. It takes people a little bit to realize that I'm not being nice. And he started talking to me kind of in good faith, which might just because he can't help himself after seeing it. It seems like he does it for everyone. And after a while, I think I just said something mean. Just said something about how he looked wet or something because he was pissing me off and he blocked me. But he was blocking so many people at this point. Whatever I said was not that funny. I'm almost positive that it related. It might not even... Okay, to be honest, I don't think it even had to do with Bernie Sanders. I think he was mad about something awful, which I don't care about. Who gives a shit? Because but it's you're mad about something awful in 2017.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Yeah, and I think that might have been the thing where, because I know that I knew who he was, in the first wave of Gamergate when I didn't know what he was from Jeopardy. So I specifically knew him from politics Twitter. But like I said, I probably wasn't arguing or even mad about anything he was saying about misogyny or nerd culture or any of that shit. Because that's all shit that, to some degree, I agree with, So it probably wasn't that. But anyways, I did get the Arthur Chu block, but I just want to point out that he blocks so many people so readily. That's not really an accomplishment.
No, that's not. I mean, he is, to me, and I'll just get into a little bit of Arthur Chu real quick. So real quick synopsis. Arthur Chu is a guy who was very successful on Jeopardy. He won, I believe, 11 games in a row. He lost in his 12th game. And to this day, he is the 10th overall earner of all time on Jeopardy. So somebody who was pretty successful at Jeopardy. After Jeopardy, he leveraged some of his fame to become a pop culture tech fucking social justice. Yeah, a media career guy. And this documentary, spoilers ahead, is basically about how he sputtered out in a very depressing way. That's very the best way I can describe it.
Public very public and very public by his own doing.
Yeah, he has no way to blame for that but himself. Like, seriously.
And the thing is that watching this, I'm going to be honest, when you first suggested this, I kind of was like, well, I don't know if I have that much to say about Arthur anymore. This was a few years ago. I kind of not only gets his moment passed, but kind of like everything that he talked about is kind of like misogyny and nerd culture. Like, that's obviously still a thing, but the conversations become something else by this point. But then as I was watching it and I was thinking about the premise of our show, like at its core, which I know we drift from and it's kind of tenuous and gets a little esoteric, but the idea that we're aging millennials and we're looking at things from a generational lens and we're saying, what did this say when it came out and what's it saying now and what does it capture about this movement? This documentary and the person it's about is such a like interesting version of that, because he is like the old millennial, and not just he literally is, but in his tendencies.
Yes, this is the most literal definition of the title of our podcast that you could possibly get. Like, it isn't like, as we've said before, like, movies like Gamer are the apotheosis of like hot couch guy culture. This is like the apotheosis of a particular type of elderly millennial. 100
Arthur
motherfucking
Chu is
percent.
The old millennial. And the thing is that
he's about as old of a millennial as you can get, because he's like 38,
he literally is. But then also, I'm going to say I'm hard-pressed to think of people in my friend group or my acquaintance group or in my general age range, including myself, who I don't see at least a little bit of watching this.
Yes. Oh my God. All right. Before we get too deep into the weeds here, I do want to go into a couple details here. So, as I believe I said earlier, this movie was released in 2017, although I believe the majority of this movie was shot between 2014 and 2015. This movie does not have an MPAA rating that I was able to find because it was not theatrically released. It was directed by two guys, but one by the name of Scott J. Drucker and Yu Gu, and it was produced by them as well. And neither of them have much prominent work, except, Brian, you're going to love this, and this is actually very relevant to Arthur Chu. Yu Gu did direct one episode of the Hillary Clinton show Gutsy, which is an episode with Kim Kardashian and Mariska Hargitay about their various sort of philanthropistic sort of ventures, I guess. But yeah, so the director of this doc also directed an episode of Hillary Clinton and Chelsea Clinton's TV show Gutsy.
That's interesting to me because, to me, I assume that this documentary was made by someone who low-key didn't like Arthur Chu, but I can't imagine that anyone directing Gutsy doesn't love him.
Honestly, so, okay, I'll get a little bit more into this here. So this movie is about 90 minutes long. It did not have a budget or box office listed that I could find, but I found this one out last night because I was looking at some YouTube videos for some research on this movie. But the producers tried raising $50,000 to get this legit released, but they were only able to raise $11,071 on Kickstarter.
Which, like, of course, it's interesting to me that they thought that this had an audience for like a theatrical release.
Also, 2 years after he was his most prominent, too.
Yeah, I mean, like, and it's actually a pretty good documentary. Like,
it is a very good documentary. But before I get too much of my opinions out, this is a really good fucking documentary.
But like, why did they think that that is not the way that a movie like this should be viewed or distributed?
I mean, this was like during the halcyon days of like early 2010s, mid 2010s, where Kickstarter was supposed to be like the next big thing in like indie low budget funding, and it just never fucking
figured
happened.
out what that meant.
Exactly.
But it's like, imagine you go with like your girl or boy or whatever to see this movie, and you're like eating popcorn or milk duds, and you just have to see Arthur's sopping wet head on a giant screen.
You just see him like getting ready for work, and you just see like comments calling him like a faggot and like racial slurs.
And it's like, well, this is gripping documentary cinema, but I don't know if I want to see it in the theater. This is so I think we should probably get. This is a bleak documentary.
This is a really fucking bleak documentary.
And I want to. Like, just before we get into it, I decided the other night. So when I do notes for this show, they aren't so much notes on info. They're kind of to process my thoughts and think about why I'm talking about this movie. And what I decided doing that was that I did not want to clown on Arthur Chu just the way that like people do, or that you and I have in private necessarily, like we're going to. It's unavoidable. But what I thought was, clowning on Arthur Chu and being like, hey, Ant Boy, in 2023 almost makes me feel as corny as him. Because it's so much later.
It is so much later.
And I also thought, like, well, no, this is something about this guy is really interesting. Like, some of these people, like, the internet, like, okay, Anita Sarkeesian, kind of a boring person. I don't think Arthur Chu is boring, though.
Yeah, the fact that the right wing made Anita Sarkeesian into this like big monolithic villain is hilarious, because she's got like the most milquetoast boring critiques of like sexism and nerd culture you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, but like I don't think Arthur Chu is like boring in that way.
No, I think he's like an immensely fascinating figure to me. Like there's just so much psychology behind it. Oh, one more trivia fact I had here. So on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 78% critic score and an 80% audience score. So critics and audiences also both like this movie quite a bit.
I mean, if you like documentaries and you have any idea who Arthur Chu is, I think you'll probably like this movie. So Taylor, you and I probably both like this from the post Chapo, post Bernie, post Dirtbag Left, whatever. Like that's where we're kind of coming from. We don't really do politics on here, kind of by design, I think. Yeah. But that is like the sphere of online that we're in. But I would say that some like, I don't know, some fucking obnoxious like alt-right, like modernity, anti-modernity guy probably would really like this. And also just like left lib who probably identifies with Arthur Chu would probably like this documentary, because it makes him pretty compelling to watch. And it does, I don't know if it does intentionally, but it raises some interesting questions about like online discourse.
Yeah, it really does.
I don't know if it's intentional, but it does.
I think it personally does unintentionally. I think, in my opinion, before, once again, I get too deep into the weeds on the actual synopsis of this movie, but I will say that I think the directors came into this with the idea of, hey, here's this like firebrand by nerd standards guy who is a big villain on Jeopardy, and he wants to be like a big media critic. Let's follow him around. Let's see what kind of adventures he gets in. And then I think probably within like the first day or two of shooting, they were like, oh my God, this guy's insufferable. Like
probably when they saw the way he treats his wife, right? I'm not trying to. God. I mean, that's what it is, right?
Yeah. I mean, okay. I have so many things I want to say about how he treats his wife, but I want to let's get into a couple trivia facts before we get into the synopsis here. But yeah, just quick spoilers ahead for the audience listening to this. He treats his wife horribly. He is a very, I wouldn't say like, he's not like physically or emotionally abusive at all.
He's not abusive. He's just a bad fucking boyfriend.
He's incredibly neglectful. He's a bad
husband.
He's a bad abusive. Husband. He is a like aggressively, tragically straight nerd who does not understand women at all, which I think a lot of his critiques about sexism are really funny, because he clearly doesn't understand the woman he's closest to. Like,
yeah. And I think like, let's say that he said all this same facile shit that was clearly kind of, I don't want to say he doesn't believe it, because I think he does on some level, but it's poised to give him a media job, as like an advocate for women or whatever. But if, let's say that he like lived those values in how he treated the women around him and just the people around him, maybe you'd be like, all right. But I mean, I don't know. This is a 90-minute documentary, but there's such a gulf between how he sees himself and like the reality.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Even just in that he sees himself, like you said, as a firebrand by nerd standards, but what's his defining characteristic? Like sloped shoulders and a glazed over, slack-jawed, glassy-eyed stare into a monitor?
Yes, he's always staring at his phone
he can't close his fucking mouth. Sorry.
Really? Oh man. All right.
Close your mouth.
Yeah. All right, let's get into some trivia here, because I wasn't able to find any IMDb trivia for this movie, but I gleaned his Wikipedia article and I found a couple trivia facts about him.
Did you check Kiwi?
Yeah, yeah,
some good Arthur Chu trivia there.
Yeah, fucking Kiwi Farms, yeah. But I browsed his Wikipedia article, and I found just a couple interesting little factlets about him. So, once again, we're talking about Arthur Chu here. He prepared extensively before his Jeopardy appearance by reviewing tapes, study guides, game theory, and Jeopardy strategy overall. He made his debut on January 28th, 2014, winning $37,000 in his first game. He won 11 games in a row. Now, Arthur Chu was, at the time of Jeopardy, was considered extremely controversial because...
That's stupid.
It's very dumb, but he did a strategy called board skipping, which is different than what almost everybody else on Jeopardy does. So
you know what? He was right. This is the moment where I'm like, I think I would have liked this guy if I was watching him on Jeopardy.
No,
I don't
100%.
get how it was wrong.
And he also did argue with Alex Trebek a little bit, which you do kind of see in the documentary, but I'm sure he did it quite a few more times other than that. But the whole thing about board skipping is that instead of just going from the low end of the category all the way down to the end, he would pick one category and then he would go to another with a different number amount. Then he'd go to another one. And
I just don't understand how it's not in the spirit of the game. Like, how? I don't understand.
I just don't understand either. And it's like, he literally is the 10th highest regular earnings winner of all time on Jeopardy. Clearly, his strategy fucking worked. He did a good strategy for him.
Let's say, like, at this moment, and like I said, this is where I think, like, I don't understand. I've watched and enjoyed Jeopardy, and until watching this documentary, I had no idea that was a rule. Or, like, an unspoken rule.
I had no idea either, and I used to watch Jeopardy a lot.
He has a pretty good thing where someone says, referring to him, or I think they tweeted him, this is presumably while he was on Jeopardy, there's a special place in hell for people that skip around the board. And he says, yeah, it's where they keep the daily doubles. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, like, I just don't, I mean, it's annoying when he argues with Alex because he's not doing it in a funny way. He's just being petulant because he wants to be right.
Yeah, no, 100%.
But the skipping around the board thing, who fucking cares? If it was that big of a deal, they would have made it a rule in game that you couldn't do it.
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, once again, he's the 10th highest earner in non-tournament gameplay with a total of $298,200. He also won an additional $100,000 for taking second place in the 2014 Tournament of Champions. And next fact I have here, if anybody wants to find out where he actually don't do this, but he resides in Broadview Heights, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cleveland. And he has worked in various capacities as a voice actor, which I found literally one role he did as a voice actor. And I don't know why anyone would hire this guy as a voice actor. He doesn't have a good voice.
I think he has a very deep voice, and he has a voice with some resonance. So if he could act, which I have no idea. I'm assuming he can't because I've seen him do that weird monologue. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, you're right. Actually, I take that back. His voice is fine. It's just that his cadence and delivery are very poor.
His delivery is weird. But also, I know he can't act because I've watched him do the rape monologue from Your Friends and Neighbors. Ooh. Do you know about that?
I do not know that. Oh my God.
Oh, yeah. For whatever reason, at an open, I'm probably missing some context, but he stood up at kind of an open mic and performed a very graphic monologue by a bad character from the film Your Friends and Neighbors in a room where nobody knew the context. It's just the character in this film describing a sexual assault.
That's really bad.
I like I said, I know I'm missing some context because I don't think he's like an evil guy. I don't want to be disingenuous. I think he was trying to make some sort of point, or he thought people would know what it was from, but they didn't.
It's just weird.
So much to talk about with Arthur Chu. I feel like I'm already getting in over my head here.
No, it's all good. And he also has worked as an insurance compliance analyst. And the last fact that I have here is Chu married science fiction writer, not like an actual published author, but somebody who is trying to get her works published, Eliza Blair in 2012. The couple met during their time at Swarthmore College. Now, hold on to Eliza for a second, because that's his wife, and we're going to go over a lot of his wife in this review here. All right, let's get into the synopsis of this movie. Now, I didn't put every bit of the events that happen in this movie, because there's some scenes that are interesting, there's some scenes that are not, but I will say most of the scenes in this movie are riveting, at least in some way.
It's kind of a hard film to do like a regular synopsis of, because it's like a character study, you know, it's just a person existing and kind of you observing them.
Yeah, no, I more like highlighted various moments and whatever commentary we have, I would just love to talk about it. So the movie starts off with a short montage of Arthur getting ready in the morning in like a dark house, while extremely disparaging tweets are displayed in the background. And some of these, I actually laughed really hard because they're just,
me too.
They're just so awful.
They're so mean.
And I also love, by the way, because they do this motif throughout a lot of the movie. Like half of these are from like the same random account. Like it's just hilarious.
I know that's like kind of cheating, right?
Yeah. They couldn't find enough disparaging comments. Although I will say, I did notice one of them in my second rewatch today was from fucking Roosh V. That's not fair. Don't put fucking Roosh V in here.
I saw that.
Oh, God.
So the thing is that putting Roosh on here makes Arthur look important in the film, I think. I think that's why they did that. It makes it seem like Roosh and Arthur are on the same plane in internet notoriety, and they're like sparring, which I'm sorry. At that point in time, they were not. One of those people had a lot more power than the other. For bad, but, you know.
Yeah. Roosh was coming out with like a new book every month. And to be fair, books literally about how to rape women in various countries.
Yeah, no, he's a fucking piece of shit. Well, now he's like a big fucking trad Christian, right? And which is makes so much fucking sense. Like a hardline Christian Orthodox guy.
Fucking gross, dude.
Fuck that guy. Arthur, I love you. I like you so much more than Roosh V. I just want you to know.
In the next scene, we also get to meet his dad, who starts to, I love this scene. He's literally just eating, and he's eating like not even that fast. And he goes like, son, next time just eat a little slower, okay? And he also was like, oh, did you gain any weight? And I'm like, oh, he's micromanaging his son. Like, oh.
Yeah. So, and these scenes, these are the most revealing, but they also are like, I mean, as someone who already did not like Arthur Chu, again, I don't know the guy, but we wouldn't get along. But these are the things that kind of make me want to like him. You're just like, come on, man. Who cares he's like 30 years old. He doesn't need to tell you if he gained weight. Fuck you.
And the thing that's really interesting, so, I mean, obviously Arthur is like a fail person in general, but like, let's be real here. His dad was probably the single most important person in creating that fail Arthur. 100%. Yeah. His dad seems like a just domineering, micromanaging little weasel of a man. And I listened to the Chapo review where they talk about his dad. He's like this austere Taiwanese immigrant who like tries to discipline. And it's like, no, he's just a fucking asshole. His dad is a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
Like, I know Chapo have a bit of a beef against Arthur because, well, to be fair, Arthur did baselessly say they were rapists, so that's not cool.
Yeah, exactly. So
but at the same time, don't give credence to this guy's dad. His dad's a prick. 100 motherfucker.
So that was one of the things that I thought watching this is like, we will say if Arthur's role, which I think, I'm going to be honest, I think gonna get gendered here, every man with like problems with like their dad or whatever, a good starting point is to like not do the things your dad did that you feel like weren't fair or weren't good to you. And in that regard, I would say Arthur is maybe succeeding or starting to by the end of the documentary.
Well, he's not cheating on his wife and leaving her to build another family.
I mean, that's literally what the bar is in this scenario, but like he probably wasn't doing that. I don't get those kind of vibes from Arthur as a guy.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, spoilers ahead. His dad cheated on his family and raised another family in Taiwan.
Yeah.
But yeah, awful stuff. Oh, and then next, Arthur describes his childhood as he describes himself as a bit of a misfit, and he sees himself as a defender of downtrodden and marginalized people. That's essentially his viewpoint. You know, once again, he was the firstborn son of Taiwanese immigrants. He describes himself as like the only Asian kid in school, not really fitting in, his family kind of sheltering him from like Western culture to a certain extent. And his way of rebelling was to just go full in on like American culture to almost kind of like spite his sort of conservative, austere, like Taiwanese parents.
Yeah. Which at this point, like, this is a thing where, I mean, you see what I mean? This is kind of a compelling guy.
Yeah, and, you know, honestly, a little bit about the immigrant thing, like, his opinions on, like, race and immigration and, like, the non-white experience are so much more complex and well thought out versus his gender stuff, and there's a reason for that. Because, you know, you're talking about women once again, like, he doesn't see them as equals. He sees them as, like, people to defend. Whereas, like, with him, like, he has a much more reasoned response towards, like, race stuff. Because he knows that...
Yeah, he's lived it.
He's lived it, exactly.
Life.
where he hasn't. I mean, unless he's transitioned since then, I have no fucking idea. But unless he's transitioned since then, he has literally no idea what women feel or think. He doesn't even listen to the one woman in his life that he's closest to on her opinions and feelings.
Man, she loves him so much, too.
Really...
He just does not. He just cannot be asked, and she loves him so much, dude.
Yeah, it's just, oh man. We then get a abridged montage of sequences with commentary from Arthur and Alex Trebek about Arthur's success at playing Jeopardy and the, once again, quote-unquote controversy that came with his board-skipping play style.
So I kind of do think, at least from the way the documentary portrays it, that a lot of that controversy might have been like racism from a conservative element of the Jeopardy audience, which is maybe I'm being like Arthur Chu now. I just don't get the board skipping thing.
I really don't understand why that's controversial. It's really not a big fucking deal. He's not cheating. He's not looking up answers. He's not like punching people when they try to press the button. He's literally just doing a different strategy than what people normally do. It's not that big of a fucking deal.
People get mad, I guess. So I was trying to think about it last night. I couldn't find a reasonable explanation from a Jeopardy fan to me. What I'm guessing, my take is, Jeopardy is a game of class. It's a game of questions and answers. And it's a game of formality. You know, you must answer in the form of the question. And Arthur, and he says this himself, he felt like he was playing mind games. When you start a category, my guess is, as an occasional Jeopardy watcher as a kid, don't watch it now. You pick a category and everyone kind of blocks themselves in that headspace, right? So him jumping around, that's untoward, because now he's not making it just about questions and answers and categories. He's making it about like keeping people on their toes. And that's like unbecoming, I guess.
Yeah.
But 100%. Again, I don't believe that. I think that's fucking nonsense.
I also love Alex has a really funny moment where he's like, you know what, Arthur did really well in this game, and now he's trying to make a media career out of it, and he's milking every bit of fame he got from it, and good for him.
Good for him. Alex,
you can just see the contempt. You can see the contempt in Alex's face.
Alex is fucking, he's a real one. He's funny as hell. I've always liked him.
Oh, God. And then the next scene here, we finally get to meet, as we've talked about her so much already, we get to meet Arthur's wife, Eliza, as she lectures Arthur about his clothing choices while he lays down and scrolls his phone in as a baby laying in a cradle position, where he's just like, yeah. What does she say? Like, he's got a hole. You got a hole in your elbow, or like the shirt elbow. He's like, you gotta get that fixed. Like, sure. And it's just like,
yeah, I mean, she's trying to take care. Like, you're trying to have this media
literally is taking care of him like a surrogate mother.
Yeah, no, she must have a complex about that. I think I had said that to you in message. She must. I'm sorry, I don't like to do the arbitrary psychology, but I can't imagine. But it's also like, I think at that point he was about the age that we are now, or maybe a little older. I don't quite remember. He's trying to have this media career, and his wife is like, hey, you should not wear this fucking suit jacket with a big hole in the shoulder because you're trying to look really, like you know what you're talking about. And of course, that's such a fucking nerd thing to be like, well, if I'm smart and I want to say I can dress like a pig.
Well, that was the whole, it totally off topic, but that was the whole like appeal behind fucking Sam Bankman-Fried. Yep, exactly.
That fucking oh, that made me so mad. Because I've teens and most of my 20s just dressed like shit. I think everyone like me is like,
I dressed like shit up until like 2 years ago.
Yeah, but it's sort of a thing where like you sort of realize like that is one of the few things you can control. You can't control your face, can't really control your body, but you can control how you dress. And that maybe it sucks, but that is a thing that you can control. Yeah.
If he gave a shit about how he dressed, how he lived, how he ate, how he reacted, he could at least be like an average looking guy. Like you see his brother in the movie, his younger brother, and his brother's like a foot taller than him. And like he's fit. But yeah, no, 100%. Like Arthur just doesn't fucking take care of himself. And then in the next scene here, we see Arthur, he finally loses in an anticlimactic fashion on Jeopardy on his 12th game. He gets like literally $0. So, it's over.
Yeah, shit. I mean, I actually, to be honest, seeing someone on Jeopardy that long lose that much money would be a bummer, but he's such a dick. Like,
Yeah, I honestly think he just kind of shit the bed on that 12th episode. And you see him like walk out, he's pretty sad about it. And to be fair, I'd be sad about it too if I kept getting money to play a board game. And then we get a solo interview with Eliza, our very first like true solo interview. And it sounds like she has a very similar upbringing to Arthur. She considered herself kind of a misfit. She had a hard time making friends growing up. She also describes, and this is the thing that makes Arthur's neglect of her the most infuriating to me. So she takes care of a lot of the physical stuff around the house, including, cooking, cleaning. She fucking...
Everything.
Literally everything. She is literally disabled. She has fibromyalgia, and she uses a cane to walk. Like, oh my God. Could you... just the audacity of Arthur just sitting there fucking laying his stupid ass on the couch while she does everything while fucking like limping around the house. Horrible.
And not only, but also just staring at fucking Twitter on his phone as she's doing all this shit.
Thank God they didn't have, thank God they never had any kids. Like, Jesus Christ.
I know.
Fucking awful. So, and like I said, we will complain about the way he treats his wife a lot more. Trust me, we are definitely not done with that.
For me, that's kind of the defining arc of this movie, really. Arthur's media career shit, that's all bullshit. The real nut of this movie is in their relationship. Like, that's what you got to be watching.
100%. And then after that, we get Arthur's first taste of post-Jeopardy fame as a columnist, according to this documentary, is a Daily Beast article where he writes about toxic masculinity, rape culture, men's entitlement over women, etc. after the aftermath of the Elliot Rodger massacre in Isla Vista. His statements about it in the doc are standard lib feminism, and it's pretty uninteresting. Like I said earlier, his commentaries on sexism are not interesting. They're really not even worth going over, but that's the thing that he seems to want to focus on the most, which I just don't understand.
So, going back to that moment, not even post, right in the moment of Elliot Rodgers and kind of the incel thing coming to swarm. If someone read that fucking article and felt touched by it, whether just because you felt less alone by it, and I think what Arthur is hoping is that you are a nerdy man and you read it and it makes you reflect. I just don't see that happening because the analysis is so facile. If you've read Arthur's article or other articles like that and they meant something to you, that's fine. But like, this guy is positioning himself as the voice of like nerd misogyny and everything that, first of all, like probably like a woman could say that better, but also his analysis is, I mean, it's stuff that he learned from women on Twitter. Like, it's very clear, and it's not wrong, but it's kind of like, it's, we need to do better. A long form essay that amounts to, we need to up our game, gentlemen. It's just like, I don't know.
Oh, man. And then also, this is one of the single funniest moments of the entire doc for me. Is Eliza first describes meeting Arthur, and she says that he didn't bathe and was an asshole, but she still liked him and wanted to date him. Yeah,
but he wasn't dating material.
He's like, she literally says they met in like some nerd club or something. I think it's literally what she said. He didn't shower enough. And he didn't shower enough, and he was a jerk, but she still wanted to be with him. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Her saying nerd club, does that make it you think that maybe it's something that's like an uncool nerd thing? Because to me, like,
was it like an anime club or something? Like,
well, that's the thing. It's like I'm not quite an anime guy. You're not quite an anime guy. We had anime friends.
Oh yeah.
You wouldn't say it like, okay, even if, let's say your friend was less nerdy now, they'd probably still say anime club. To me, if I'm saying, unless it was just an all-purpose general nerd club, which like maybe, I'm like, was it like a furry club? Why didn't she want to say what it was? Is it a Star Wars club? Is it a fucking steampunk? Like, is it something like steampunk? Is it like a furry thing? Is it something really lame and that's why she doesn't want to say it?
Yeah, that's certainly fucking possible. Oh, shit. Yes, and in a later scene, we get to meet Arthur's mom, and she seems like a very lovely woman. They talk about the fact that Arthur didn't pursue the path that his dad had set out for him and how that was a disappointment for his father. I don't know how we talked about how his dad is like just a fucking just cheating, lying, just kind of sniveling little asshole in his own right.
Yeah.
But his mom legit does seem like just a very lovely lady. Who just wants
we
the
don't
best
really
for
learn
everybody.
much about her. Yeah, she just seems like a nice kind of aging mom, just very sweet, just wants her kid to do well. I mean, there might be more there that, like I said, we really do not learn as much about his mom as his father. So, but from what we get, just seems, just a nice lady, just a nice mom.
For sure, yeah. She talks a little bit mainly about like how he should like forgive his dad for all his faults or whatever, and basically like, oh, you should also treat your wife better, which hilariously enough, his dad also says you should treat his wife better. It's like, you should have treated your wife better in the past, bro, but hey, whatever.
Yeah. So the way I took that, I mean, that's a little, is being generous to his dad is like maybe that's why he's saying it, is what I thought,
Yeah, no, for sure. And then
everyone says to Arthur, be nice to your wife. You're really lucky to have you. She loves you very much. And I mean, basically they're saying like, hey, she's kind of too good for you.
It's literally hilarious. Everybody in this movie says, be nicer to your wife. Everybody
he just can't do it. He doesn't even respond when they say it.
He's like, he just like mumbles a response or doesn't say anything.
Yeah, and also I think I'm gonna write an article for BuzzFeed coming up about the 8 meanest tweets that got sent to me.
And speaking of, Arthur has his very first public speaking engagement at a Silicon Valley Tech Dick conference. And we also get to see Millennials Are Old podcast, legendary cameo appearance by Jared Leto, our favorite actor. Our favorite musician, our just favorite media figure, Jared Leto.
I'm really excited to see the new biopic about him starring The Weeknd. No, I hate Jared Leto so much that seeing him here, I was like, oh, I wonder. For a second, I had this nightmare image of him and Arthur like meeting and be like, hey, we're best friends now. But I knew that wouldn't be the case.
Could you imagine them standing next to each other? Who would be more? Well, okay, never mind. We know who would be more.
Jared would be more cringe and more creepy than Arthur for sure.
By a country mile.
And the thing is, I was thinking, why is Jared Leto just in here so that we are given the impression that that's the level of celebrity that Arthur is ascending to in this scene?
I kind of assume that, yeah.
Because he doesn't contribute anything to the narrative of Who Is Arthur Chu.
Even the bit of the speech that they have is just like, oh yeah, tech is like different these days. And then he leaves. It's like, what was the point of that?
Well, I don't know what you expected Jared Leto to say about tech.
Well, to be fair, I expect Jared Leto to say a lot eventually when he's up on the the courtroom stand, but that's neither here nor there. Hopefully he gets the Danny Masterson treatment one day, but that's neither here nor there. The speech goes okay, but it's pretty boring, uninteresting speech about sexism and tech. He speaks a little bit too fast. He's very disparaging about himself after he's like, well, I didn't have time to prepare. I had like a time limit. It's like, honestly, for a first-time speech for Arthur Chu, it was fine. It was perfectly fine.
But I'd probably be doing the same thing if I was him in that situation.
That's fair. That's a fair point.
So the thing with his thoughts on like sexism and nerd culture is, I guess, still there wasn't a whole lot of mainstream discussion about that stuff at this time. So maybe being generous, you could say, well, he's saying like kind of the simple parts of it just to get the ideas out there. Because this is still, what is this, 2015?
Yeah, I believe
roughly?
2015, yeah.
This is still like where, maybe on a wider sense, people still think nerds, that's like the Big Bang Theory, which is actually a very sexist show, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so maybe if I'm being generous, you could say that he's being kind of shallow because his analysis is very shallow kind of for that reason. But really what I kind of think, and again, a lot of what he says, it's not that it's wrong. He's just repeating things that, I think he's learned from women, that he's heard them say. And it seems a lot like it's grappling with his own problems with like himself. And I mean, that is where a lot of recognition of problems begins, but it's kind of, to me, reads as a desire to define himself as in opposition to the bad nerds, rather than like an understanding of what makes men and like nerdy men or whatever sexist, what makes them these aggressive, these embittered. It's not really an analysis of why are they like this. It's just, I'm not like them. Aren't I a good boy? Give me lots of jobs coming up on stage and talking about how I'm a good boy.
He's the perfect encapsulation of a liberal male feminist.
Yeah.
And then after the speech, this is one of the most harrowing scenes in the entire movie. Arthur and his dad go out for lunch, and like his dad can't even fucking make eye contact with him. He can't make eye contact with his dad. He's micromanaging his speech patterns. They're obviously very distant. He's not super sure about his future plans. His dad begins to emotionally open up about like his dad and Arthur's grandfather. Like, I think he'd look down on us and be proud. And then Arthur goes, what? He goes like, yeah, I think he'd be proud of us. And then immediately retreats back into himself. Like, oh, I gotta go. I gotta go to work. And then he leaves with a full plate of food on his table. It is wild.
So I put myself in both of their heads for this. So if
Yeah.
I'm Arthur Chu and my dad is treating me like this and not looking at me and just bailing with a full plate of food, I would say like, hey, what the fuck is wrong with you? But if I'm Arthur Chu's dad in this scene, I would just kind of be thinking like, man, whenever I talk about anything with this kid, he just talks about Twitter and he's just dripping wet. He is so wet. I cannot overstate it. And I might be like, hey, I need to get out of here.
I don't understand why he's like, man, Arthur, I try to love you, man, but like you really got to wear some like Axe or something. Just like stop being so sweaty.
Off. Yeah, take a washcloth and run it through your hair before you leave the house if you're not going to wash it, man.
But yeah, honestly, if you could just take a picture of just like the most like awkward part of this dinner, you could like write a whole essay just about it. It is there's so much like psychology in this scene. It's wild.
This scene, other than there's a pivotal scene between Arthur and his wife, there are two conversations that to me are like the centerpiece of the film.
100%, man. God. And then, as we talked about earlier, the audience learns, I should say, that Arthur's parents got divorced after it was discovered that Arthur's dad had an affair and even a separate family back in Taiwan. We also get to meet Arthur's brother and sister. His brother's name is Norbert Chu. He's, I believe, the youngest. And he's like tall. He's like fit. He's not a bad-looking guy, and I just love how he introduced himself. He's like, I don't really understand why Arthur cares so much about the social justice stuff. Like I know that kind of makes me sound like a dick, but like I just don't get it. And that made me laugh really hard.
Yeah, well, he says, I don't see the value in it. And the thing is, if you like Arthur, you might read that it's like, oh, his brother doesn't care because he cares about making money. But the way I kind of read that is like, I don't see the value in it because you're not contributing anything of value.
No, you're not contributing to it. You're not a particularly successful columnist. You're just like a guy. You're just a guy.
You don't actually have that much to say about it. Yeah,
he's a glorified reply guy. That's literally what he is, and he's trying to make an entire media career out of it. And his brother and sister are like, "Hey, we're proud of you for like sticking up for yourself, but like, why are you doing this as your sole career? I just don't understand."
Yeah, I just don't see how that's not a career move, which is fine. But again, he's not particularly good at it. And he found his moment when the Gamergate shit was happening, but he wasn't able to find anything to say of more depth beyond that to kind of stick it out longer.
Like, no, 100%. Like, I love doing this podcast with you, and I could do this podcast forever, but I can tell you what, unless a miracle happens, I will never quit my day job to do this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, if we're gonna, we better soon, because we're not getting any younger. As
as elderly millennials here. But no, really, it is bizarre to me that, like, you have interacted with Arthur Chu individually, just because he was that, like, non-important of a figure that, like, which, I mean, to be fair, you did have some following, but you weren't like a gigantic Twitter account either.
I had like, I think like 400 followers. So not a bunch,
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, yeah, Arthur, man, like, I know you wanted to make this work, but just make it like a part-time hobby, bro. You didn't have to make it a full-time. If he made this
Trust me, you can post all the time and still work.
Exactly. If this guy if he just wanted to do it as a part-time job and just be like, you know what, I'm going to write an article on my Substack here and there, and I'm going to fucking just do whatever I want, and I'm going to treat my wife really good and not ignore her, nobody would ever hate you outside of like Roosh V. Nobody would fucking hate you.
Well, like, so the whole reason, I think, the reason that Arthur hates like Dirtbag Left, Chapo, Bernie Sanders, and he does hate Bernie Sanders, he did at a certain point.
He did, 100%.
The only reason is because people that like Bernie Sanders make fun of it. That is how shallow his politics are. I 100% believe that. The actual things that I think Arthur Chu believes, and I do think he like believes them to some degree. Like everything that he decided that Bernie was bad because people that like Bernie Sanders made fun of him, and he couldn't wrap his head around why they were making fun of him. It's also, you can sense that after the Jeopardy thing, he says pretty blatantly, I need to figure out what I'm going to do before my 15 minutes runs out. I need to figure out what I can talk about that makes, he does say explicitly, I need to do a lot of engagement so people don't become bored with me. Like, that's not why you should be doing engagements about social justice, man.
100%. And I also noted there's a line in the movie that Arthur says, so apparently there's a family story. I don't know how true it is, but this is what it said in the doc. There's a line that Arthur says that his grandpa chose his dad's major for him, but because his English wasn't apparently very good, they picked the wrong one by accident. So it was supposed to be like computer science, but he did like chemistry. And his dad just went for it. And
I hope that's not true.
I hope that's not true either, because if that's the case, that is the most depressing life story.
That might be true. Like, I have no reason to doubt it, to be honest.
I mean, we're talking about very austere. Also, I did mention, I totally forgot, his dad is also like a very like devoted Christian outside of the cheating part.
Yeah.
He's a very devoted Christian. Like in every scene, he's like praying or doing a prayer or something. Like he's very explicitly religious. And, once again, he's a Chinese immigrant. Arthur and his generation are like first generation Americans, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Conservative, a lot of societies are very patriarchal. Like conservative Chinese families are extremely patriarchal, about fucking Confucianism and all that, whatever, right? So there may be a possibility that like he is like the fucking patriarch paterfamilia of this family. Maybe that literally did happen. And his dad was just so into the idea of like, oh, this is my dad, I will respect what he says. I'm just going to fucking do it.
I have no reason to doubt that, but that's a story that checks out to me.
Yeah, exactly. Like he wanted to be a computer scientist, but he ended up just doing chemistry. And like you can obviously tell that Arthur's dad is obviously not satisfied with his life. You can obviously tell that. He is a miserable man.
Yeah, he looks sad, just destroyed, much like Arthur.
Yeah. Oh, God. And next scene we have here is after the deaths of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, we hear an excerpt from one of his articles where he details a racist incident. Once again, talk about his dad experience, and his own issues with his identity as an American, Asian, and an Asian American. And honestly, this was like probably the single best like reading of an article that he did throughout the entire movie. I was like, that's a very interesting little anecdote. I appreciate your thoughts. And honestly, if you were to just talk about stuff like this that you have an actual like lived experience in, I might actually give a shit about your articles. Like, I'm just being honest.
Yeah. What's interesting with that article to me is so he relays a story about his dad feeling like we're being about to be attacked, like hate crime, basically. And in a moment, preparing to like throw a stone at his attackers or something, or hit them with it. You're really being ready for it. And it ended up not coming to that. And then his father explaining to him, his father saying to Arthur, it is not your country. It will never be your country. You can live here and you can spend your life here and have a family. And what's interesting about that, when Arthur's dad tells him that, it's a conservative sentiment. You need to always remember that China is your homeland or something. But when Arthur's saying, he's saying, this will never be my, not so much a conservative thought. It's more like, this can't be my country because of all of these fucked up kind of predispositions and institutions that make it impossible for it to be.
No, 100%. Yeah. And I did enjoy the juxtaposition between his dad's opinion and his in this article, which is like why I said I thought this was the single best one, because it actually did have something important and interesting to say. So Arthur, you had your broken clock moment in this movie.
Yeah. And the thing is too, it's a very short, or well, maybe there's a longer version of this article. Maybe I should have listened to that actually, but like, it also like, he's a pretty good writer in it. Actually, when he's detailing that experience and that story, he paints a pretty good picture. But like, why don't you write more? Maybe he does. I'm not going to claim to be super well versed in his writing,
And in a montage, we get to see Arthur going to various conferences talking about Gamergate and other 2014, 2015 online topics. And I do believe this was the point where he like goes to a like Asian like interest convention or whatever. And he's like, you guys are like doing your thing and fulfilling what your parents want and you're successful. But like I bucked the trend by being a fail guy who writes articles.
So rude.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so bad.
I was like, he doesn't know anything about any of those people, right? They could
100%.
all be doing different shit when they're at this like inaugural dinner thing, but this banquet. But that doesn't mean that's who they are all the time.
No, 100%. Like he is presupposing that these people don't do anything to buck the trends of like break stereotypes. Like fuck you, man. How do you know that?
Yeah.
Like whatever. And by the way, even if they are stereotypical to him or whatever, who fucking cares? They're probably much happier than you fucking are, dude.
Well, but also, like, I mean, that's true too. They probably aren't that stereotypical.
No.
Because, I mean, maybe they aren't what he would be. Maybe but it's like, you don't know these people. You don't know, like, their internal lives. You don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not like Asian American or whatever. I felt like it was pretty fucking rude of him. He basically went up there and given an opportunity to speak to what basically is his community. He said, he did say, I'm bucking the trend. And I decided to, take the road less traveled, implying to this room of people that they are not doing that.
Yeah, I am an Asian American who bucked the trend by going on a game show and winning all the trivia and being smart. Oh, I bucked the trend of being an Asian. Like, what the fuck? Bizarre.
Yeah, I'm the first Asian American to know a lot about, like, pop culture and video games.
I'm the first Asian to know a lot about, like, various hard sciences on TV.
Yeah, like, I'm sorry, man. It's just...
I'm the first Asian to be a nerd on TV.
Yeah, like, get the fuck over yourself, Arthur.
That'd be like me, like, I'm bucking the trend being a blonde guy with long hair and liking metal.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Oh, and then, you know what? The next scene here, Brian, this is the scene that we talked about that is most illuminating for Arthur. Arthur and Eliza go get lunch at an Italian restaurant, and Eliza's just pouring her heart out, asking how she can help be a positive change for the world, and she's just like, I want to make a difference, and giving Arthur credit for at least trying, and his head is glued to the phone the entire time.
Yeah, it's staring directly down there going, and she's just trying so hard, reaching out, just desperately asking for him to give her something back, some sort of connection, some sort of acknowledgement, and he just can't.
Really funny, there's a scene where it's like, well, is there anything I can help with? He goes, no.
I don't know.
And by the way, he literally goes,
I don't know.
Like, he literally says, I don't know, monosyllabically.
She's like about to cry.
She goes like, all right, I guess I'll do support on my end.
Yeah. And he goes, okay. Sounds good.
I'm laughing, but it is legitimately really fucking sad.
It makes me so angry. You know what? I changed my mind. He's not better than his dad. You know what? Do you know why Arthur doesn't have a secret family and isn't cheating on Eliza? It's not because he's a better person. It's because he can't.
He literally can't.
He can't con anyone else into it.
Brian, there might be some truth to that statement. Oh, God.
It makes me so fucking mad.
If there's two scenes, and Brian, I'm glad you mentioned the two scenes that specifically highlight his relationship with his family and his wife. If there's any scenes you watch from this movie, audience, please, for the love of God, watch both the restaurant scenes, one with his dad and his wife. They are the most incredible scenes I've seen in a documentary in a long motherfucking time. They're incredible.
Also, not as important, but it is funny to see his younger brother, who is like a traditionally hot guy. It is so funny to be like a nerdy guy like Arthur Chu, and you have like a Chad younger brother.
Yeah. Oh, and also his sister too. We forgot to mention his sister. She's like a cancer research doctor in like a children's hospital.
Yeah. So Arthur can't even say that. Like, he's like, well, I might not be making money, but I'm doing something that matters for society.
Yeah, his brother is like a successful software engineer, and his sister is a cancer research doctor at a children's hospital. Like, clearly much more successful people than him. And, like, to be fair, like, he could have been successful at his job. Like, his job was a insurance analyst. Like, that's not a shit job. That's like a fairly well-paying job.
Well, also, I'm going to say he could have been pop culture Jeopardy guy as like a side thing. And still probably been, it would have gotten old, would have maybe been kind of Reddity, because he's actually, to me, a very, like, Reddit, very GBS type guy. Boy, every year that goes by, fewer and fewer people know what that means, huh?
Yeah.
But he's pretty gibbous, but, pop culture guy. And maybe he's, like, kind of left-leaning, kind of liberal, but, he kind of more focuses on the snarky pop culture element. Probably could have had a pretty good side hustle follow doing that for a while having a real job.
And who did that? Ken Jennings did that until he finally hosted Jeopardy.
And Ken Jennings, the man, one of the coolest Mormons. I mean, there's a few.
Yeah.
Ken rules.
He's one of those alcoholic Mormons instead of the teetotaling Irish. He is a alcoholic Mormon.
He's friends with a lot of Fiat guys on Twitter, which is very funny to me.
That's so funny. Next thing here, we're talking about him quitting his job. So he does quit his job as an insurance analyst to write and speak full-time for a living, which he does for like a year before he gives up at most. And Gamergate finally gets mentioned through various news montage segments, including a Colbert Report segment. Arthur has a panel at MagFest where a woman, I believe her name is Eliza Melendez, she did something prominent, but I totally forgot about it. It's not important, but I totally forgot about it. And this is another very funny moment. She grabs the mic, and for whatever reason, there's only one mic at this panel. I don't know why. She grabs the mic and she says, I just wanted to know, I am terrified to be in this room right now, and that just says everything. And then Arthur grabs the mic, he's like, oh, wow. All right, let's get to questions. Like, he doesn't even process it.
Yeah. He's so excited to have, she got her moment, now it's time for me to have my moment.
He doesn't even say, like, wow, that was really important that you said. He just literally goes, wow.
Yeah, he just immediately, he's ready to have his moment after that. All right, well, now that I know that you're scared for your life, let's open up the floor to people that might want to kill you.
Oh, God, and yeah, it's...
I don't know why, like, I sort of did Obama there for a second.
Yeah, no, but that's a very funny moment. Speaking of very funny moments, Arthur goes on to the David Pakman show. And I believe, Brian, I've told you to watch this interview. You did see a little bit of it.
I know I watched it.
And I know you agree with me on this. He made a total fucking ass of himself on that interview.
I mean, first of all, I don't know a lot about David Pakman. I had to do some research on him after watching the clip to make sure that I understood kind of who he was at least a little bit. I don't think I'd like him or his show, really. He's not a great interviewer. And he doesn't see, I think he knew at the time about as much about Gamergate as I did, which is to say not very much. Just wasn't a thing. But also, like, again, Arthur says earlier in the documentary that he would take any speaking engagement, anything, because he doesn't want people to get bored of him. Guess what? If you believe that you're like fighting like fascism, you're fighting like structural misogyny, maybe that shouldn't be your prime motivation. It's like, well, I'll do anything. Because he basically went on to this show he went on there to have a meltdown. He was like, I'm going to come on this show and freak out because I'm so pissed off, which might be valid, might not. Gamergate was a fucked up thing. Sure, it was like, yeah, a lot of fucking horrible pieces of shit did horrible things to a lot of women or said they were going to do horrible things or what. Yeah, sure. It's a bunch of fucking dumb bullshit made up by a bunch of psychos that spend too much time playing video games and not enough time talking to women. But if you're going to if you are going to be like, I'm the counter to this movement, maybe don't go on a show and like pee your pants about it in front of everyone, which is kind of what Arthur did. So sorry.
Yeah.
And I think he thought he was being a no bullshit guy, but he looked like he was getting just owned.
Yeah, I watched that whole interview twice, and he just shit the bed so bad in the interview. Like, there isn't a single time during that whole interview that I'm like, okay, he's getting the better of David Pakman. And by the way, if you get laps ran around you by David fucking Pakman, you suck. I'm sorry.
Guy sounds like kind of a dimwit, right?
Oh yeah, David Pakman's a huge dimwit. I used to watch his show back in the day because he was kind of like in the Young Turks sort of like sphere of like progressive YouTube like fucking news show or whatever.
Sure.
He's not the worst of them, but he is not the best. Like, okay, if you get your ass kicked by like prime Chunk Wigger, fine, whatever. I can imagine somebody would get their ass kicked getting debated by fucking Chunk Wigger. But if you get your ass kicked by David Pakman, you clearly need to take a break and do some like debate prepping with somebody else. Like, you need some fucking help.
Pakman, to me, just from that, I watched the interview twice as well, just to kind of let it sink in and marinate with me. Does seem just like a debate kid.
Yeah, he's just like a nerdy debate guy. He's fairly harmless, but he's just a milquetoast lib. That's literally all.
Yeah.
So like when he's talking about it in the interview, like I was talking to Gamergate people because I was trying to understand it. I do believe he literally was just like, I don't know anything about Gamergate, so I'm going to ask everybody I can find about Gamergate. And then Arthur was taking it as like a personal, like, oh no, you were just talking to the psychos who just hate women. And it's like,
that's the whole thing about like platforming, that the online kind of left lib thing, everything's about platforming,
Yeah.
And my whole take in retrospect on the Gamergate thing was that maybe if you don't know a lot about it, maybe you shouldn't be trying to talk about it, because it's also like, I'm not in the video game community, and I know like just because it was such a big thing online, I knew about it, but it was also like, I don't fucking know, like who the fuck cares, not who the fuck cares that this is happening to women, but like this is like one part what women go through, and like, why am I talking about it? I don't know anything about video games, I don't know anything about the culture or the industry.
Yeah, no, and honestly, with the David Pakman thing, right? And he even says it in the interview, like, I'm just literally trying to figure out what's going on. I'm trying to get everybody's fucking input, and you were a prominent person who's like anti-Gamergate, so I had you on the show. Like, he admits that he doesn't know everything about it too, so he admits he made a mistake, but Arthur just cannot get it out of his fucking head that this guy is the enemy. I need to attack him. I need to have a fucking meltdown and put him in his place, but he's just so fucking bad at it that he makes himself look like a petulant child.
He made himself look, like a child. Kind of seems like that was sort of when his rise to prominence, such as it was, kind of peaked.
Yeah, and then he describes the fallout from it as one of the worst 24 hours of his life. And Arthur decided to quit Twitter fairly soon after this, although that's not entirely true, actually. I think this is where the documentary kind of distorts the truth a little bit. So that interview happened in late 2014. He was still tweeting as late as the end of 2016 because he had a couple tweets post-Trump. So I think...
But maybe did he stop tweeting a lot? Do you know, did he tweet a lot less?
I still think he tweeted pretty prominently because, spoiler alert, I actually did find some of the funnier tweets I could find of Arthur Chu's.
Oh, yeah.
And most of them were done after this interview. So, but he eventually decided to quit Twitter roughly sometime late 2016, early 2017.
In that regard, he is a bigger man than I am. Yeah, I still have not quit Twitter.
I have not either, but I don't really reply to much anymore.
I was permabanned for telling Matt Forney that I was going to carve his head with a potato peeler, had all my shit deleted, lost all my followers, made a new profile, and was not able to get anyone to talk to me on it. I'm still on it.
But yes, he finally decides to quit Twitter. His mom, he talks to his mom once again, and she says that she wishes that he would help Eliza more with her dreams and ambitions. And Arthur is like, once again, just doesn't even have a response to that, as always.
It's nonplussed.
And then the last major scene, Arthur, Eliza, and the rest of his family go to Taiwan. And Arthur describes trying to figure out his roots while there. Arthur would like to reconcile with his dad, but he is understandably unable to do so. And I think both of them will probably never have a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
And there is also a scene where they go to his like grandfather's memorial and they do like a Christian prayer. And I don't know if you noticed this, but Eliza is wearing a Nyan Cat t-shirt.
I did not notice that. I'm sorry, what?
You know the Nyan Cat, the like Pop-Tart the Pop-Tart like cat rainbow thing?
Oh my God. Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, let me look up a picture real quick. I did not notice that. I take back what I said about her being kind of cute. Yeah. Oh my God. What is? Oh, that thing.
Yeah, she was wearing that T-shirt during this like
very
memorial.
Dignified.
And then we get a scene where Arthur and Eliza are just sitting on a thing. She's like, "Yeah, I'm just excited to where our life is going. Like, media career is going to turn into anything." And then the very end is a blank screen with text that comes on, and it says Arthur's still working on his book. Eliza works part-time at a vet's office while she's writing her novel, and they are now separated.
Yeah.
The end. They got divorced.
Happy ending.
Happy ending for Eliza, seriously.
Yeah.
So that is Who Is Arthur Chu? Once again, I know we talked about this earlier. This is one of my favorite documentaries I've seen in a while. Like, not my favorite documentary of all time, but this is a really fucking interesting documentary to me. I loved this.
So what really hits me watching this now, and again, I'm kind of watching it. Yeah, I said earlier that in a lot of ways, Arthur Chu is like the definitive old millennial. Think about all of the worst criticisms of millennials, the broadest, most unfair. All right, so what? We're lazy. We don't know how to take care of ourselves. All we care about is pop culture.
We have very infantile
thin-skinned. Yeah, we can't control our emotions. Yeah, we're basically children. We have anxiety about everything. We're just, and then you look at Arthur Chu and you're like, oh, you're this guy. Like, you are that. And it is literally just so specifically. I mean, there's other reasons, but it is because of who you are and the time you came up in. That was your thing, is that you just escaped into early video games and early internet, and that's everything to you. And you're just trying to find a way to live in it.
Yeah. And I would say to parents who may listen to our episode who don't want to raise this kind of elderly millennial child, do not helicopter your children and do not shelter them. That will help avoid, not fully avoid, but that will help avoid people like Arthur Chu.
I mean, obviously there's other reasons, but I mean, it's so interesting to see, because this is I don't think there would ever be a Gen Xer like Arthur Chu, and there would never be a Zoomer like Arthur Chu.
I completely agree with that. I 100%. If
this is one of ours.
Yeah, this is one of us. He was one of us. But no, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, before we get too much in our opinions on the movie, I want to save our final thoughts until then. I want to get into some Amazon reviews. Now, there aren't many Amazon reviews, but I did find a couple. And let's highlight the first one here. This review is from J.G. Matthews, who gives this film 5 stars. And the head of the review says, a revealing portrait of Arthur Chu. I first saw Who Is Arthur Chu at the LA Asian Pacific Film Festival. Not knowing much about Chu previously, I thought the film was going to strictly be about a unique Jeopardy champion and cover topics solely relating to the game show. But as the film progresses, it turns out to be a revealing portrait of Chu's complex life. That the film was an official selection at Slam Dance will tell you all you need to know about the film's quality. But I'll add that I personally think the film was particularly well made by the filmmakers as well. At first, Chu seems perhaps a bit distant in his personality. Oh, really? But a few scenes really allowed me to sympathize with him as a viewer. Specifically, there's a few scenes where we see all of the intense hatred he is forced to endure from Twitter trolls that were quite shocking to me, frequently stemming from his ethnicity or him speaking out on the Gamergate controversy. Additionally, there is a scene later in the film between Arthur and his father that I found very revealing about their strained relationship and explained a lot about who Arthur is today. I would highly recommend Who Is Arthur Chu to anyone who likes documentaries, but particularly to those who are interested in themes of Asian American identity, toxic masculinity, and cyberbullying. So I agree with pretty much that entire review.
Yeah. Again, one of the when you say about toxic masculinity is, I think what's really interesting about this is Arthur is so committed to fighting toxic masculinity. And I don't think it's necessarily put on, but he's got his own like toxic masculinity that is so core to him and he just can't see it. It's really, and it's on full display. It's really fascinating. Like it is.
100%. Like, yeah, he's toxic masculine in the sense that he expects his wife to just be like his fucking maid. He's toxic masculine in the sense that, like, he can't ever, like, truly emotionally open up to a lot of people in his life, and pretty much anybody in his life.
He sees everything as a battle. I mean, maybe not a physical battle. He sees everything as, like, you're the aggressor. That's the only interaction he knows beyond, his wife taking care of it.
Yeah, it's really sad. Like, he is a guy who is kind of like he's always fighting against his own like loneliness and isolation no matter what.
Yeah.
It's sad. I honestly, Arthur, if you're out there, because I think I saved this till the very end, but I'm just going to say it now. Arthur, after disappearing on Twitter, he's literally done pretty much nothing in the public eye since then. So like the last 5 or 6 years, he had one paywalled article in like the Washington Post a couple of years ago. But that's literally it. That's the only thing he's written. Even his website doesn't list anything past 2016 for his articles.
I mean, maybe he came to the same conclusion everyone else did,
Yeah, no, 100%.
All right, let's get to the next review here.
This one is from Sandy Baker, who gives this movie 5 stars. And the header of the review says, meet the Arthur that I met. And the body of the review says, I am one of Arthur Chu's fellow Jeopardy 2014 Tournament of Champion participants. People made I know, right? Wild. People made snap judgments about Arthur, but I always believed that the haters were dead wrong. I knew I was right when I met him at the tournament. If you want insight into the real Arthur, it's here in this movie. I recommend it highly because it's about so much more than just a game show appearance. Which is true, but after watching this movie and having interacted with him, I don't understand how you can still like him as a person. I just don't. Like, especially as a woman. Like, I just don't understand. Like, I mean, if you just like a man who just like snivelly sticks up for you, I guess. But there's no substance behind his defense of like women. He's like the classic internet white knight.
I agree. I have to assume, too, that there are other traits that he has that just aren't the subject of this documentary. And maybe I wouldn't like them. Maybe I'd find them annoying. His sense of humor does not seem good. He seems like he has, I'm pretty nerdy, but he seems nerdy in kind of a different way that might kind of annoy me. But, he seems like he has a wide array of interests. And you know what I mean? That's like if she's also a nerd, she might just like him, Eliza did,
God, that's true. Yeah, maybe. And speaking of other women that like him, let's get into the next review here from Jan Kuntz, who gives this movie 5 stars. And the header of the review says, had no idea. And the body of the review says, never heard of Arthur Chu prior to this documentary. He totally understands the gift of gratitude. When the statistical probability of a good fortune falls in your lap, use the experience to pass the gift along. So many have been enlightened by his words. I can't wait to read his book. Thank you. And I do believe that was Arthur Chu's burner account.
so many have been enlightened by sorts. Really? I
Like
mean,
who?
the people that like what he writes are people that read it and go, yeah, I agree with that. I am also a good boy.
Yeah.
And then they retweet it,
Yeah, no, Jan, if you're out there, I have a really interesting just painted wall you can stare at. I think
Yeah,
you would
no
find that
shit.
very interesting as well. And then the last review I have here is from Silky Boy, who gives this 5 stars.
Silky Boy, is that like a pimp?
Yeah. That does sound like a D-tier pimp you would find in like a bad blaxploitation movie.
Yeah, it's like an Iceberg Slim like protege.
But they give this movie 5 stars. And the header of the review says, heard about this on Chapo Trap House. Didn't disappoint. Wow. And the body of the review says, I knew Chapo had a long-running beef with Arthur Chu, so I was expecting them to blast this movie. Instead, they said it played like an Adam Curtis movie, full of ominous dread meets a Maisel Brothers fly-on-the-wall observational doc. After hearing this, I had to watch. And oh man, it didn't disappoint. If you're a fan of the greats like Herzog, Berlinger, and McElwee, and you like docs that really unpack human nature, you will like this movie a lot. It's so totally unexpected, at times harrowing and at times hilarious. The whole ball of wax, utterly strange. A fever dream about a man the world has already forgotten in an era of way too many documentaries. This is a movie that reminds you just how great documentaries are. And I agree with that pretty much that entire review. I think it's a fucking great review.
That's the other thing. If you want to get into why this is a great addition to the Millennials, our old library, this documentary was made, I kind of think, under the assumption that Arthur was going to do a lot more. That this was going to be like an introduction to this guy that we, like, hey world, get ready for Arthur Chu. You're going to be seeing a lot of him. But it turns out that it captures his moment so completely.
It literally captures it from like the beginning of his actual moment.
And really, is there like anything else? Like, how else would you describe Millennials' moment in culture? How brief was the moment that we people our age had a culture that was leading youth versus Generation X or Boomers?
I would say probably the single most important like millennial moment, like early millennial moment, when there was like a thing that we could have really like it could have turned into something, but it was just a moment, was probably Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah, but just like Arthur Chu, that was that moment, and we didn't even realize that the moment was over until it had already started to set into the sun.
Yes. And then a little bit of Bernie 2016. And then I think the final death knell at the very latest was Bernie 2020.
Yeah. Bernie 2020 was the moment that we all had to hang our heads and become 30, I think.
Yeah, really.
I wish I were joking. I wish I weren't being this dramatic and fucking like soy about it. But yeah, that's really Bernie dropping out 2021. We were all like, well, onward just to 30.
Yep. Well, that's it. I better start investing in my 401k.
Yeah, better get 3 more roommates so I can keep living in Portland. More like, no, I do have a 401k for now.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude.
Hell yeah.
All right, then last little segment I wanted to do before our final thoughts. I want to do something a little bit different that we haven't done before. I found a couple of Arthur Chu's, a couple of my favorite tweets of his. So ones that I find hilarious. First one I found here is, I hate America. I hate white people. I hate you personally, and the only motivation I have is to spite you. There's your healing, which was immediately the day after Donald Trump got elected. So I assume that was about the election, but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, I mean, like, fine.
Yeah, it's
useless.
Fine.
It's one of those, but it's like, if it made him feel better to say that, then I'm glad for him.
Oh no, 100%. And then the next one I have here, and Brian, you're gonna love this one. I'm gonna guess this is gonna be your very favorite. I'm happy to admit that I can't satisfy my wife. Only a world without inequality can.
I know that one. The thing is, he's trying to be self-deprecating, but you can't be this guy and make jokes like that. When your unsatisfied wife is such a public part of who you are, everyone knows that she really is unsatisfied. So when you make that joke, it's kind of like, hey, buddy, I know you think you're joking, but like, this is just weird.
Oh, and
I remember that one.
And speaking of publicly unsatisfied, we will get into some of her tweets in a little bit too.
Yeah, I had a couple too. We probably have the same ones.
Yeah. And the next one I have here, and Arthur Chu linked a document here, which was, I'll just say the tweet real quick. And it says, tell me this fucked up shit the FBI sent to MLK Jr. And once again, it's a link to this document to get him to kill himself. Doesn't read like Gamergate.
Get the fuck. Not everything is Gamergate. Gamergate isn't the ultimate expression of American right-wing politics. It's one thing. It is one event. I'm not saying it's not bad. I'm not saying it shouldn't be taken seriously. But they made Gamergate everything because everything's video games.
Comparing Gamergate to the civil rights. That's just hilarious. That one made me laugh so fucking hard.
That's like, to me, that is like a straw man by like an all-right person, to make like anti-Gamergate stuff look dumb. It's like, come on. I wish I had, I was trying to find them, but of course, most of his tweets are hard to find now. I wanted to find the tweets of him talking about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Oh, God, if you could find them, that'd be great.
Yeah,
but
I keep going, I'll look.
I got one that's really, yikes in the moment. And honestly, the FBI should look at his fucking hard drives after this tweet. But this next tweet is, children should be encouraged to see the accoutrements of quote-unquote fetishes as a normal part of adult life, since they themselves will soon be adults and probably have their own quote-unquote fetishes. And in parentheses, the key problem here is seeing quote-unquote fetish as a terrifying virus infecting vulnerable minds. What does that mean? What does that mean?
I don't think he's a pervert for that. He's just so stupid. He's trying to, he's playing to like a sex positive, gender queer type audience that he doesn't really understand, just like he does with feminist issues. And he's going like, fetishes are really just different people's ways, different ways different people have sex, which is true to a point. Children should be encouraged to learn about it, and he like doesn't even realize what he's saying. Meanwhile, every fucking gay, trans, whatever person in the world that has been accused of being a pedophile, been targeted based on some right-wing like hate campaign, is like, no. What do you, But Arthur, I don't think he's a pervert. He's so dumb that he thinks that he's speaking for like queer and like sexually marginalized people. And they're all just like, no.
That's kind of what I was hoping to get at, but it's just it's so out of context. It sounds awful.
It does sound awful. He's an idiot for saying it. Also, like, what's his fetish? Just having a woman take care of him while he doesn't bathe?
There's no way that his fetish isn't just like women stepping on guys' nutsacks. Like, that's probably his fucking fetish. I don't know why.
I was assuming the opposite, that secretly he's like really nasty to women, is what I'm guessing.
That's certainly possible too. Yeah,
well, we're just speculating, but we figure if we are, we may as well go there.
Well, to be fair, he speculated baselessly that harmless podcast bros rape women, so he can go fuck himself.
Yeah, fuck this guy.
And then the last one I have here, this one is another very funny one. I try to remember, as a straight dude, that the discomfort I feel at gay porn sites is how women are made to feel most of the time.
Like, no, it's not, you idiot. And this is the thing, with him insisting that he's an expert on, like, sexism and misogyny, this is a deeply set guy who has a very childlike view of women.
I just don't understand.
He thinks that how he sees gay porn is like, not for me. He thinks that's what living in a world of like, not to get all whatever. He thinks that's rape culture for women. He thinks those are the same feelings. He thinks he understands what women experience with like rape culture and the fear of like, walking alone after dark or whatever. He thinks that that's the same as him going, I don't know. I don't think I'd like that up there.
Just,
fucking idiot.
Just fucking moron.
I forgot about that one too. You said it, but wow, that really encapsulates why he's a piece of shit.
And then speaking of piece of shit, let's finally get into some of Eliza's tweets, because some of these are very funny. So,
sad.
Yeah. So the first one I have here is, sudden urge to have an adventure. Clearly today is the day to schlep the toilet seat Arthur broke to the hardware store and find a replacement.
How do you break the toilet seat?
The next one I have here is, lol, I'm so cranky at all the shit I have to do. I'm laughing at myself for being so mad, while simultaneously being really mad. Back to reality means busting my ass to make sure Arthur's life goes as smoothly as humanly possible. Car shop, bank, clean everything, and cook.
Jesus, what an asshole. Yeah, and you have the follow-up to it, right?
Oh, what's the follow-up?
Follow-up is, let's see, let me pull this up. Oh, I'm actually thinking of the one where the Hot Lovin' one. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're all good.
Do you have that?
No, I don't, but I do have another one. So this is another very interesting thing about Arthur, and I really should say a lot about how poorly he grooms himself. So for the longest time, I heard about Ant-Man and ants. And I thought for a long time they were talking about another online Asian cringe lord Ian Miles Cheong, who actually does have his very own ant problem. But Arthur Chu also had his own ant problem. And Eliza talks in her tweets, describes some of the incidents involving ants. So here we go. Yesterday, we went to lunch before checking into the hotel and coming back across a pedestrian bridge whose railing was just coated in ants. I was like, OMG, don't touch that. And 5 seconds later, Arthur touched it anyways because he is super aware of his surroundings. Instant ant hands. They didn't bite him by some miracle, but I was super grossed out. He just brushed himself off and we continued to the hotel. So we walk up to the desk looking like people who have been traveling for 9 hours, and Arthur puts his hands down and ants run out of his sleeves. And I am freaking out and pushing them off the counter while the desk guy just stares at us like we're directly out of Men in Black.
Yeah.
And then another one I have here, and this one's from like 2010. So this is how long the ants...
Just search Arthur or Eliza's tweets for ants.
So fun story. I opened a brand new box of Frosted Mini Wheats this morning, and it was full of ants.
Because Arthur was digging his hands into the cereal box. I'm 100% sure of it.
I hope the ants living in our heating system love this ant poison as much as they love crawling on my face in the middle of the night.
Because she sleeps next to a man who is made of ants.
I woke up with ants on my face, so today started out great. And then this one's another one from 2011. Nice car, constantly covered in duct tape thanks to my boyfriend's driving skills. Cute apartment, biblical plague of an iridactable ants.
The funny thing about this is that these tweets also reveal that Eliza's kind of funny in that nerd random girl way. So
yeah, no, she's actually really funny.
She's really taking it in stride.
I have a couple more here. So today's job, just like yesterday's job, sort Arthur's mail, clean his clothes, buy his food, cook his meals, fix his car, pick up his trash, clean residue off everything he touches after eating. Organize his desk now with bonus emails and spreadsheets. Continues to sit on couch in like parentheses. I guess being paid.
Hang on, there's one after that one that I want to give you.
Oh, hell yeah.
This is clearly her venting in this thread. I don't want to breeze over, clean off residue off everything he touches after eating because the world that paints of him and his hygiene. But after these tweets, she says, I guess being paid in room, board, cats, and hot lovin' ain't the worst deal in the world. Lots of people have way more reason to be cranky. Very bleak.
Very fucking bleak. Oh, God.
Poor woman. I'm so glad she made it out.
Also, like, hot lovin', there is no way Arthur is
grandma?
good fucking.
But also, like, why did you say hot lovin'?
There is no fucking way that Arthur even lasts longer than 30 seconds. There's no way. Arthur has to be the worst fucking guy of all time. He cannot fuck.
The thing is, though, he's so greasy that, like, she can just slide right onto him with no lube. You know, even when she's, like, bone dry, he's just so greased up, he's just sopping wet, you know?
He's like, oh yeah, Eliza, you like that? Oh, I'm gonna make you so wet, baby. And he just takes like his fucking forehead.
No, you're enunciating too much. It'd be like, oh, you like that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then he was.
Oh yeah, Arthur, do you need help with that? Maybe.
He'd start getting some retweets, and he'd be like, oh. And then when he hit 1K retweets, he would just bust.
Then one last thing I wanted to show you. So have you seen the Arthur Chu Game of Thrones picture?
No.
I'm going to post this in the Facebook chat right here. Just look at this picture.
Oh, I have seen this. Oh.
And just look at his shoes. He can't even tie his fucking shoes.
Oh, man.
And you see like the fucking tongue of his shoe is like jammed in there.
Yeah, what are you doing, man? Like, they make no-tie shoelaces, bro. Oh, my God. But also, like, don't you pride yourself on being, like, a big, like, nerd with lots of knowledge? And you're, like, watching Game of Thrones? Isn't that, like, isn't that normie shit? What are these? Oh, my God. I never know.
That was also a show that had its moment. It was, like, a big, obviously, millennial culture thing. And just shit the bed at the very end, apparently. I never got into Game of Thrones, so I have no fucking idea.
I tried to watch the first season because when it came out, I knew a girl that liked it and she wanted me to watch it. And I just was like, this is boring. It's boring.
It looked kind of boring, if I'm being honest. But yeah, no, that picture.
I don't remember the shoes on this, but holy shit! Come on, Arthur.
Yeah, buddy. Like his like right shoe, like I'm not even kidding. Like to take the tongue of your shoe and literally jam it all the way down to like the top of your toes. Like he jammed it that far.
Destroying your feet, bro. You don't have to live this way. Don't you know you don't have to live that way?
Just imagining him and like there's just like ants crawling out of his shoe.
That's the ants are like tying his shoelaces together to trick him.
He's like that one character from like Naruto who has like fucking like bugs in his bones as like his superpower, but he just has bugs everywhere.
I'm so glad I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't ever watch Naruto. Terrible
I don't.
Show. That's my one insufferable nerd moment, is referencing a character from a TV show that no one cares about anymore. But
I have since we're opening up here, I'm just gonna give one of mine. I get mad about how popular superheroes are now because I feel like it's easier for people to be into them than it used to be when I was a kid, and I feel like it cheapens them.
Agreed.
I mean, that's an insufferable nerd thing, but that is a thing that I think sometimes.
I just think that the only people that should be allowed to play superheroes anymore are Ezra Miller. That's it. That's the only person who should ever be allowed to play superheroes. By the way, did you see, this is an off-topic tangent here.
Good.
And this is totally not relevant to this episode, but I want to mention it. I saw a scene that's apparently from the newest Flash movie, which of course Ezra Miller had his own controversies, where I believe he literally held a gun up to a baby's head in real life. That literally happened during his like bipolar manic episode. There's a scene in apparently this movie where he puts a baby in a microwave to protect it.
Awesome.
Like, what? No, if Ezra Miller was in real life, he would have put that baby in there and put it on fucking nuke.
Just watched it fucking explode.
God, I love how they want everybody just to fucking forget about that so bad that he was like literally about to murder people like for like months.
Yeah.
He was on the verge of having like a Ted Bundy fucking murder rampage for months.
Yeah. I mean, but you know what they say about great artists is they're complicated, and normal people like you and I can't understand that. But sometimes what it takes to play a cartoon character.
You know, I think that Ezra Miller, you know, after he was in fucking We Need to Talk About Kevin, he's just been method acting ever since then.
Yeah, because wasn't he in some other movie where he played a psycho?
Oh, no, that was We Need to Talk About Kevin.
Yeah, but I thought there was another one even.
There might be. I'm only familiar with that one.
I mean, I don't know. I actually have not seen that movie, although I've meant to for a long time.
You know, that might be a good topic for a future episode because it is part of the also millennial and to a lesser extent Zoomer cultural phenomena of mass shootings at school.
Mass shootings, yeah. I mean, like, you know, they started with Gen X, but really they didn't become like a thing. It's kind of like how, like, like Columbine, that's kind of like the Velvet Underground of shootings, but really, like Virginia Tech, Aurora, that's like the Clash and Black Flag, man.
Well, to be fair, they were both born in 1981, so they're like borderline Gen X, but I would consider millennials to start in like probably like 81.
Yeah, well, so, but what I mean, I would say that even if they're Gen Xers, the school shootings they enacted were more touchstones for millennials as young people, right?
I would agree so, yes. So maybe one day we'll cover We Need to Talk About Kevin, but who knows?
I mean, so one of the things is I've actually thought about talking about movies that have been tied to mass shootings, either, you know, because they're inspired by them or because people, you know, censors of Pearl Clutch said they would inspire some. That's the thing I've had in the back of my head is like shooting movies for a while and, you know, how that relates to the culture and millennial outlook on, I guess, guns and shit. I mean, that's a big topic. We'll have to come back to it at a later date.
All right, but yes, let's finish up this episode here because it is late as shit and I'm old and we're going to go to bed soon. Brian, what are your final thoughts about this documentary?
So it's frustrating to watch. Arthur Chu is a deeply frustrating person. Here's what I think. Especially if you are like, you're an older millennial, like, and you spend a lot of time online and you've maybe been exposed to too much of the discourse, the capital D discourse, I'd say you should watch this movie. You're going to see a lot of things that even if you weren't around for the specific shit they're talking about, you're going to recognize a lot of the language. You're going to recognize a lot of the back and forth. And I think you're really going to see, like, this is probably why it's not a good idea to really take your online activism too seriously and to not think that that's everything you are or that it's even ultimately that important, because you might end up like Arthur Chu and just be neglecting the people around you. You might think that you're such a fucking good online discourse warrior that you just neglect and abuse the one person in life who loves you more than anything, and then you lose him.
Exactly. As the very famous butt rock song said, you don't know what you got until it's gone, which is really, I think, Arthur, the life lesson of Arthur. Like, you want to be a big person, you want to go out there, you want to make a difference, but honestly, you should make the difference in yourself first, 100%. Because there are some things that Arthur did do that he did not follow in his father's footsteps, but he is dysfunctional in a different way.
Yeah. And dude had a lot going for him. Maybe still, like, he was on fucking Jeopardy. Clearly people thought he was relatively funny. He had a lot of knowledge about things people think are interesting. He had a really sweet wife, who wanted, I think, to build a future and a family with him. And
a sweet wife who was way more attractive than him.
Yeah. Who didn't mind that he just didn't bathe, didn't wash his hair, didn't brush his teeth.
But she still loved him anyway.
Yeah.
And he threw all of that away to just argue with Nazi Pepe 88 on Twitter all day.
And yeah, to what end? To what end? To feel good about himself?
To get put into a documentary where Roosh V is owning him on screen.
Yeah.
Just sad. Just really fucking sad. And I will say to anybody who's listening at home who considers himself just an aggressive online warrior of sorts and just argues with people all day, just sit back and think for a second. None of these people that you're arguing about online, they're not real people to you.
They're not real. They're not.
None of this is real.
You're playing a text-based RPG.
100%. And also, I did want to mention a scene earlier because it was not a very important scene, but there's a scene where he's literally doing like a LARPing group with like
I forgot about that. That's rough.
He's LARPing as a fucking crusader of justice.
It's like that. Come on, just have fun for a second, man. You're bumming everyone out.
He had a golden goose opportunity, which is why I thought it was really funny that one review says, when you have the gift of gratitude, you really should just go for it. It's like, actually, no, he did the exact opposite.
He has no fucking gratitude.
He has none of it.
He has as much gratitude as his father.
Exactly.
In a different way.
He is somebody who literally made history, as once again, he is the 10th highest earning Jeopardy contestant of all time. He took that notoriety, he took that infamy from his, once again, quote unquote controversial style, even though obviously it isn't. It shouldn't be controversial. But either way, he took that entire distinct personality he had on one of America's most storied and legendary game shows, and he just destroyed it in the span of like a year.
Yeah. For what?
For nothing.
For what?
Honestly, his story is like almost kind of a Greek tragedy to a certain extent. Like it's just.
It would be if he was a cooler guy to begin with. It would be. He's not great,
Could you imagine him like dressing up as he does, but he's pushing a boulder up a hill forever?
I mean, except for him, he'd be pushing like a pillow. He'd be like, I don't know. I couldn't think of anything there. I got nothing.
But yeah, either way, this is a tragic portrait of the very worst traits in millennials on screen.
Yeah.
Just absolutely perfect. So, but yes, those are our final thoughts on Who Is Arthur Chu, one of my favorite docs I've seen in a while. I'm going to sign off here. This is Taylor. You can follow me at Carlos Chantor on twitter.com.
This is Brian. You can follow me on Twitter at JONSTABB. That is John Stab.
Yes, and you were recently finally called by name on Twitter by a podcast that we both listened to because they're finally honoring a request that you put in like 2 years ago or something.
Everyone go in. This was 2020. Everyone, we'll let you know when the episode drops. Go and give $5 to the POD Cast Pod and listen to this episode about this band called Horror, because I mean, it's going to be, I'm just excited to hear these old guys talk about this band and see what they think of it. And also, no, instead of doing that, just go listen to Horror. That's HO9909. Don't follow me on Twitter. Don't follow Taylor. Just listen to HO9909. Triple Nine Disciples, Horror Death Cult, bitch.
And give the other Brian and John credit for finally honoring your request years later.
Every fucking time that I saw him tweet in a poll and say like, okay, because he forgot. I don't think he was but he forgot. He didn't want to do this album after I donated a bunch of money to do it. And he was like, hey, I don't really think this is particularly new metal. And then I remember when they were posting things in polls for years later, and I kind of got over it. I was like, well, they just don't want to do it. That's fine. It's their show, whatever. But then I remember they included horror in a poll, and they included Avril Lavigne, and I was like, Avril Lavigne is new metal. And I think like John had forgotten all about me wanting them to review this horror.
Oh, I bet he forgot.
But I said like, is Avril Lavigne really like new metal enough for the show? And then Cullen says to me, who I've never forgotten this, still salty about it, says anything is new metal if you believe in it. And I was so mad. But you know what? No, they've done the right thing. I can find, because honestly, this was a burden on my listening to one of my favorite shows. It kind of hung over me and it made me sad. I was like, oh.
It was really funny as I saw it. Horror got posted in the poll. I'm like, oh my God. And I did vote for them, to be fair. I want that to be very clear. I did vote for them. And they got dead last.
Well, not fair. Because Horror are a new band. They're young. They're kind of not experimental, but they're kind of extreme. Hardcore punk, new metal, gangster rap, all these influences, abrasive stuff. And then they're up against Saint Anger and fucking, what was the other one?
I think one of them was Chevelle. That was
Chevelle.
And then I can't remember what the last one was, but yeah.
But like, and then so they finally include but they didn't include it with like other like contemporary like underground albums. It's up against Saint Anger. It's up against the fucking Limp Bizkit album. It's gonna get creamed, dude. They're gonna do it as a bonus episode. Which you know what? Part of the reason I've always said I don't like Cullen's takes for a long time, but I kind of think that really honestly that was partially because he didn't want to review that album, and I think it just made me whiny.
No, 100%. Oh, and the other one was one of Vanilla Ice's new metal albums.
Oh, yeah, which will be a good episode. Have you heard that album? It's crazy. Vanilla Ice's new metal shit's crazy, man.
Yeah.
All right, we gotta go. Because I gotta walk over to the house I'm house sitting after this.
Yes, once again, this is Taylor signing off.
This is Brian. Millennials are old. Millennials are dead.
Hell yeah. Have a good night, everybody.